in S21 or never heard of it before? Stop it. Who are the new ones? Hello, welcome. We are S21, stands for Satoshi 21 Million Digital Supply. The last 3 years, we've been organizing crypto, blockchain, Web3 related conferences, gather-ups, meetups for networking, specifically for crypto professionals. And we have bi-weekly events. Every first Wednesday of the month, we have a networking event. Every other Friday, we have the presentation event with a C-level or a founder. And today, we have Brian McKenna, who's been in S21 community more than a year now. And he has more than 6 years experience as a C-level in layer ones. So now he's going to talk about the Mina Protocol. Hope you enjoy. We're going to have a little discussion session afterwards. Thank you so much for joining the session, Brian. Thank you.
Hey everyone, can you hear me? Cool. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Melissa, for having me. Yeah, like just what Melissa said, like I want out of this everybody to know more about like zero knowledge, cryptography, technology, how it relates to blockchain. And I'm going to talk about it like in the context of Mina Protocol because that's what I know most about. Like, feel free to hop in with any questions. There's no need to wait until after. I'm not going to get too technical, but it's going to get like reasonably technical at times. So yeah, just let me know if anything is unclear, and we can sort it out. We're a small group, so it'll be easy. Okay, this is a bit small. Does anybody want to have a shot at explaining like what ZK is?
You can do a transaction securely. Everybody knows that you're a real person, but nobody knows who you are.
Yeah, exactly. It's about proving something to somebody without revealing what that something is. And I don't know, like this kind of does sound like magic, but it was a cryptography primitive that was invented in 1985. Silvio McKinley and one other person won a Turing Award based off this invention. And computers weren't like performant enough to even like run this kind of stuff until, you know, I think the early 2000s. And there wasn't an implementation of it in production until I think the Sprout release of Zcash. And since then, it's really like exploded, right? Like as the cryptography has gotten better, more people have come in. They're incentivized by, you know, blockchain and writing papers and things like this. And also the blockchains are getting better, performance is getting better, and I think now like we're at the precipice of this being like really, really usable and important. So like I took down a couple of like definitions. So like a very fuzzy definition is that a ZKP is a way to convince someone of a fact without revealing any information using cryptography. A less funny definition is that a protocol like this is a method by which one party, the prover, can prove to another party, the verifier, that something is true without revealing any information apart from the fact that the specific statement is true. So, like, these kind of like cryptographic arguments have been used in Zcash first to prove that somebody has money to spend and without revealing anything about their account, and the transfer happens like, you know, in the dark. Explain it to me like I'm 5. So if you have a closed like locker with a code, you can simply prove to somebody that you hold the right password by unlocking it without revealing the password. So like essentially then once you've done that, they know that you know the answer, but they can't see what the answer is. So like that's what zero knowledge is, and like it's extremely powerful, not just for blockchains and crypto, but like for the general world, right? These things don't need blockchains to run, and they're important, like, you know, in and of themselves, especially as it relates to like data privacy and proving things about like your identity, your transactions, anything that you want to prove to a third party, without revealing like the underlying data that you're proving over. medical records or any of this type of data that's just like floating from our devices basically to everywhere. It can all be processed like securely, and the things that we want to release can be released, like, which is like under our control. Yeah, I just always remember this tweet from Vitalik. I expect ZK-SNARKs to be a significant revolution as they permeate the mainstream world over the next 10 or 20 years. And like, we could see that like Ethereum pivoted away from the scaling solution, which talked about sharding and all of this kind of thing, and like they made it like a strategic bet on ZK like a few years ago, and like that's starting to come into production like pretty soon. Like we have optimistic rollups now, but ZK rollups are coming, and I think like the #1 demand in blockchain for ZK has been scaling, and that's what's happening first. I'm going to talk a little bit more today about privacy and data security as well, but we can also talk about scaling as we go along. Okay, just going to give an overview of Mina, talk a little bit about privacy, going to talk about how smart contracts work on Mina, going to talk about cross-chain ZK apps and how zero knowledge is useful for bridging. And we've seen all the problems that have happened with bridging recently, so this is something I'm particularly excited about. And then like what's next and what can be done with Mina like right now and how people can get involved. So I think the title of this talk was a succinct blockchain. So Mina started doing the crypto like in 2017, I think, and they experimented, and Mina was launched to mainnet in 2020, I think. Well, 2023 now, 2021. And Mina launched as a proof-of-stake network, using Ouroboros consensus mechanism, which is like a modification of Cardano's proof-of-stake. Which is cool. It's a good proof of stake because it has these features which are good for decentralization in that anybody can like run a node. There's open participation. It's not like you need to be whitelisted or anything. And there's no cap on block production, which is like a shortcut to performance if you cap your block producers. So like these are kind of features that were designed in with decentralization like as a core ethos of Mina, and as I go through, you can probably see more of this, especially as it relates to this succinct blockchain idea. So, like, why succinct blockchain? What problem are we trying to solve? So, other blockchains have like an increasing size that accumulates over time. Yeah. Okay. So, block by block, the blockchain gets bigger, right? It's like it's kind of like a logical sequence, and I think we can kind of see this with ordinals at the minute, right? Like every Bitcoin block is getting full with 4 megabytes by JPEGs. So like yeah, the Bitcoin node's going to get heavier over time, but you know it's within the protocol, so it's all good. So I'm pretty sure this number comes from Bitcoin. So to run a Bitcoin full node, you need 400 gigs to store the previous history of the blockchain since Genesis. And you can't validate a new block unless you have every single transaction since Genesis. So what Mina set out on mainnet launch to introduce is this notion of a 22 kilobyte constant fixed size blockchain. Okay, I'll just go back to this one and talk about this one a little more. Why is this important, right? Well, again, decentralization. So if somebody needs like a terabyte, for example, to run an Ethereum node, it's not really that decentralized in that like there's a large hardware footprint for somebody to actually participate in consensus. And you know, then there's the technical overhead of being able to set up and run this node and all this, but mainly we're talking here about storage. So how do we achieve this 22 kilobyte thing, right? So back to zero knowledge proofs. Mina, in the sense that we've all heard about ZK rollups now, Mina is essentially a ZK rollup of itself in that block by block, each previous block has a ZKP of the state that's in that block and of the state of every previous block since Genesis. So if we imagine the latest block, which isn't settled. The transactions are coming in. Block producers are going to produce the block. That block has the current state, and the previous block has the last known global state, which is proven back to Genesis, right? So block by block, we don't need to store all the data to validate every transaction since Genesis. We're using a zero knowledge proof to validate these things as they go along in a recursive fashion. So that's how we can say fixed size. Why is that important? Well, what we can offer now is full node security from a browser or a mobile phone without having to store 400 gigs or a terabyte, and basically participate in the network from your device in that easy way. And like, that's what we mean by decentralization, I think, right? Where everybody can like openly participate with like a low barrier to entry, a low technical overhead, and like a low hardware overhead as well, right? It's kind of like one CPU, one vote, which has kind of gotten like forgotten about, but that's what we set out to achieve. Yeah, and like ultimately, where do we want to go with this? We want people to be participating in the network as block producers, like staking, running consensus from their mobile phones or their browsers. I think Vitalik talks a bit about this from like Ethereum's perspective as well. They actually have I really like the roadmap. Like right down the bottom right, they have like post-quantum everything and like ZK-SNARK everything. So what he means by ZK-SNARK everything is that people are basically running Ethereum validators from their cell phones. How is this useful now? Well, when your full node is running in your browser, you don't need to use a third-party service provider to talk to the protocol for you, right? So anytime we use MetaMask, we're going through an Infura node, or we're going through Alchemy nodes or something like this. But really, you have full node security from your own node to be able to submit your transactions yourself without trusting anybody, which is like a really cool decentralization property. So, what is Mina? We've talked about this. 22 kilobytes, no cap on number of validators. The entire blockchain can be verified on minimal hardware in milliseconds, and I touched on the trust aspect of not having to trust third-party node operators when interacting with the chain. And the next thing we're going to talk about is smart contracts. So where we're at now, we have mainnet launched. The smart contracts upgrade is on an incentivized testnet at the moment, and that's due to hard forking over the next few months. So, like, it's worth talking about privacy now a little bit. I feel like ZK in people's minds is mainly focused on scaling at the moment, because I think that's the most important thing people are trying to solve for. But like, if we think back to like the definition of ZK, it's really bloody good at privacy, right? So it's good to define then what privacy is, right? Like, what do we actually mean? Is it like just Tornado Cash, or are we trying to like achieve something like grander? No offense to Tornado Cash. So we can say that privacy is the ability to decide what you want to share and who you want to share it with. And I don't think that's pretty hard to disagree with, right? And that's really not the world we live in today. On blockchains, for sure, and definitely not in like the real world or Web 2 or whatever outside crypto is called. What does privacy and security look like over time? So, Web 1, we had static web pages with privacy concerns. We weren't using our credit cards on the internet. Everybody was like too scared. Cryptography came in and saved the day, and like websites started using PGP. And like, yeah, like that was a big like inflection point, I think, and like cryptography really solved that. To make Web 2 really what it is today, right? So we have good web pages. They're centralized. The data like in the back end is stored in centralized servers, and like there's no digital asset transfer. And like what it really means is that in Web 2, it's centralized. These actors store our data. They use our data for things that we don't know about or like we don't like mandate them to. And not only that, they lose our data all the time, and they get hacked, and our data is like flying around everywhere. So then, like, what's the point of Web3 as it relates to privacy and security? We don't want things to be censored. We want self-sovereign identity. We want decentralized servers. We want like digital asset transfer, and we don't want any intermediaries like between our payments. And where are we today? Tools are being built, not really ready for mass market. Regulation is evolving, and yeah, we're trying to figure it all out. So, smart contracts on Mina. So, the best way to think about smart contracts on Mina is to think about how smart contracts works on Ethereum, right? Like, really, Bitcoin came along and like solved the centralization problem, but didn't have much scripting. It has a little more scripting now, and this is why how people are using the NFTs. But really, when the EVM came on, blockchains became programmable, right? I don't think we could really call Bitcoin programmable, and this was like a massive inflection point. So what's happening here is that client side, somebody is sending a update to an application which lives on Ethereum. Now, all of these nodes basically represent the Ethereum network, right? So, yes, go back one. So, each one of these transaction updates updates the state of the transaction, which needs to be like gossiped and computed around every node on the network before it's settled and it's like finalized in a block. So every Ethereum node needs to process this new transaction and agree that the new global state as a result of the transaction is the new global state. And not only do they need to do that for like the most recent transactions that come in, like block by block, but they need to validate from Genesis every single transaction that's ever happened. Which is like, you know, it's a high overhead, and you know, really that's kind of why gas costs are so high, right? The network can't handle the load that it needs to process all the transactions that come in, because every node needs to agree. So we can think again client side, this remains the same. This network remains the same, but the model is quite different. So as we saw before, the transaction goes to the chain, the computation happens on every node on the chain. Mina uses off-chain computation, so the state change that the user wants to make happens client-side on their local machine. A zero-knowledge proof of the state change goes to the chain, and the smart contract logic on the chain validates whether that proof is a good update to the global state or not. So like what's happening here is that as much off-chain computation as like the developer or user wants to happens off-chain. The chain isn't burdened with whatever that computation is. So like there's a lot of scaling advantages and like heavy computation that can be done. And there's a lot of privacy advantages, right? Because any data inputs which are going into the transaction or state update remain on the client side. The zero knowledge proof is just a verification that the thing was computed correctly. So like we talked about like the performance about how the EVM works, but also like there's a privacy element to how the EVM works too, that all of the data which goes into a transaction is public on the whole network for every node to process, obviously, and every node to see. I basically spoke to those two things: user privacy through zero knowledge, and unlimited off-chain execution. Okay, so like we've spoken about how the model works differently from Ethereum. Like, how does a ZK app work itself? So a ZK app is made up of two components, which can be written in the same library, by the way. One is a UI component, which is client side, and one is a smart contract, which lives on chain. So back to the zero knowledge definition. we have a prover and a verifier. Prover making a statement, verifier verifying that the statement is correct. So prover function runs locally, generates a zero-knowledge proof. The verification key is stored on chain and verifies the correctness of the execution. Yeah, so like this basically illustrates what's happening. So mycoolzkapp.com, which lives in your browser or your cell phone, part of the smart contract code lives in the UI, and the other part lives on chain. So the user computes over whatever they want to compute over, whatever the application developer has written for them. Basically, they don't really like care what's happening under the hood. Transaction gets generated, which is a zero-knowledge proof. If the zero-knowledge proof is valid, as in like the verification key on chain recognize it as a valid state update and the correct like computation, it'll get accepted on the chain and the state update is done. Okay, so ZK apps are written in TypeScript using Snarky.js, which is the Mina specific library for like TypeScript over ZK. Runs in the browser in Node.js, can use all the existing tooling and things like this. What's really cool about Snarky.js is that, like, I don't know, like single-digit years ago, this kind of cryptography was only able to be coded by, I don't know, like I'd say less than 100 people in the world, right? Like it was super niche and super mathematics heavy and like just very, very, very hard to do. What we're trying to set out to do here is have this TypeScript surface language. It's a language everybody knows. There's really, really good tooling. And then to create abstractions down to like predefined like zero-knowledge circuits so that a developer doesn't really need to understand what's going on inside each circuit. They just need to understand the abstraction of like what the circuit like can be used for and like deploy the thing in that way to like achieve what they want to achieve. Yeah, so like this is really cool, and it's really part of like how ZK is going to go mainstream. I think it's just going to get much easier to use, and the more people using it, like the better and the faster the progress. Okay, so what can you do with this? Private DAO voting is like a very easy example. Yes. Yes.
When you say the computation is done locally, is this a central server or like how does that work? Is there a way to? Is there a better way to do it like in a more distributed fashion or?
It's locally on the user's device.
Each user, so it's per user also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how like we achieve like data privacy. So like anything that's going into this user smart contract, like their name or their age or their, how many bored apes they have, is retained like client side for them, and then zero knowledge proof is generated and submitted to the network. Yeah. So private DAO voting, it's kind of an easy one. User uses their ZK app client side, generates a proof of their vote. Vote gets sent to the network, gets counted. Their vote is invisible to anybody else on the network, but like the correctness of their vote is counted in the total, which can be like exposed in public state. And that's like an important thing as well, is that the developer can choose which state they want to remain private and which state they want to remain public in their contract. Real world financial data. This is possible through, we have Chainlink and things like these, but there's a feature that we're working on called ZK Oracles, and ZK Oracles use some kind of magic through HTTPS and TLS, where they can take Web2 data and make a proof over it, and like verify that the centralized web server that it came from, that the data is correct. And that feature, so basically it's like a ZK Chainlink, I would say. Chainlink are also working in this direction, and so like it's a really cool like progress for crypto generally. Safe interoperability of private enterprise data. Yeah, like I always think back to the consortia-based blockchains that happened like I think 2018 and things like this, and where people were spinning up their own networks to do like consortia-based things that they wanted to do, but they were all permissioned, right? And the reason they were permissioned is because no privacy was available, and these enterprises needed privacy over their business logic or their underlying data or whatever. So like in this case, with private off-chain computation, enterprises can collaborate like on a blockchain over things that they're all interested in and compute over things locally without revealing anything about like their account balances or their inventories or anything that they don't want to be shared, which is really cool. Easy to spin up ZK rollups. So like what's cool here is that Mina was built like from day one with ZK natively, like in all of the primitives, the tooling on the L1. So the properties of Snarky.js make it really easy to like use Snarky.js to write another network as a rollup on top and settle that back to the L1. So there will be a rollup ecosystem happening on Mina, hopefully quite soon. Anonymized proofs of on-chain information. This is kind of cool. Basically, any on-chain information can be proven over that you don't want people to know, right? So like, if you want to join a DAO, membership of that DAO is like, you know, you need to have minimum 10 BTC or, you know, X or Y Bored Ape. But you don't really want to know that your account has 100 BTC or that you have like all the Bored Apes or whatever it is. So you can prove then over your account that you qualify for membership without revealing anything about your underlying account, which is like really cool crypto native use cases. And I think these are going to be the first things that get built, like as they usually are. Yeah, zero coin implementation. So like the crypto that we have and like the expressibility of ZK apps like would allow somebody to build like a Zcash network as an L2 on top of Mina as like an extra privacy layer. And what's also really cool is that there's like a lot of configuration that can be employed there as well. So, you know, transactions under $100 aren't shielded, and transactions over are, or transactions settle based on each party being KYC'd or whatever it is. So there's like this kind of configurable privacy which is coming as well. So it's not just like, you know, you're either private or you're not. There's going to be more nuance, I'd say, about what privacy means, and that's probably something that's required to bring in like enterprises and, you know.
If you put a zero coin implementation, it will be another coin on top of L1 from Mina, or it will be directly integrated in Mina, like the Mina transaction will be invisible.
Yeah, you could do it on the L1 or an L2.
Okay.
So you like it would be a custom Mina asset, and it would be like there'd be a shielded pool involved as well.
Like a C20, but anonymous.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like just to say, like this is just like 6 ideas. Like I really believe that like with ZK programming especially, like we haven't really experimented much yet, and it's really down to like the creativity of people who come in and build. Like nobody really knew what the EVM was going to be used for when it was launched. Like people had ideas, but none of those actually came to fruition. So it's until people come in and figure out like the potentialities that I think is where like the innovation is going to come. Yeah, cross-chain. So we have on testnet now a one-way bridge from Mina to Ethereum. And what's really cool about this bridge is that it's a ZK bridge. It's fully trustless. It doesn't rely on any central party to like bridge your assets. It doesn't rely on a mint and burn mechanism, and it doesn't rely on any like. Yeah, it just doesn't rely on any like central parties basically that you have to trust. So like, how do we do this? So back to the succinct nature of Mina blockchain, we've said that it's a roll-up of itself, and the latest Mina state exists in the last block as a zero-knowledge proof. Why would we want to do this? Well, actually, we issued a grant jointly with the Ethereum Foundation and Mina Foundation about 18 months ago, and this is coming into production soon. So why would Ethereum want to do this? Well, Ethereum developers don't have access to like zero knowledge smart contracts natively in the EVM. There's like some rollups that are coming which do offer some privacy, but I don't think they have the expressibility of what Mina can offer. So think about an Ethereum developer who has a need for some privacy element in their project. Well, what they can do is they can leverage Mina's succinctness for a cryptographically secure bridge to Ethereum. And how do we do this? So we want to verify the rolled up zero knowledge proof of Mina inside the EVM. So remember that it's quite small. It's designed so that anybody can update the smart contract and load it into the EVM contract. And then the EVM contract will validate whether it's a real Mina state or not, right? And there's a gas cost for uploading that contract. And there's going to be proof markets coming soon where they're kind of like exchanges for zero knowledge proof generation. And these kind of proof markets will be able to generate proofs that are going to be flying around everywhere. So like there's an incentive for people to generate a proof of Mina, put the correct proof into Ethereum. Mina's consensus like chain selection rule actually runs in this contract as well. So not only can we like prove that it's a valid Mina state, but we can also prove that it's the strongest latest Mina state as well. So that an Ethereum developer like knows that if this like smart contract account in the EVM is there, then they know that it's like a valid Mina state. Multiple applications can use this bridge. Sometimes I don't like calling it a bridge, right? Because it's kind of like it exists in the EVM, and all the developer needs to do is like call the canonical Mina state contract and specify which account they want to look up, and they get access to the data. I actually think about it as more of a roll-up to Ethereum for privacy as opposed to scalability. Yeah, so there's a worked example here, which I'm going to have to think about because I haven't looked at it in a while. So this is not a bulletproof example, but we want to say that a user attending a conference wants to prove via a Mina ZK app privately to an Ethereum DAO that they attended the conference. That's the use case that we're trying to solve. Okay, so yeah, so they've created a new ZK app on Mina, and there's a verification key deployed on the Mina state, on the Mina smart contract on chain. The user submits their proof of identity, which will be something like your barcode from your conference pass or something like this. And they update their Ethereum public key inside the Mina smart contract. So the Mina state gets bridged to Ethereum. Now the latest Mina state lives in Ethereum. So the DAO contract on Ethereum now looks up the Mina canonical state contract. It specifies the Merkle path of the account which lives on Mina. It checks the verification key that's on Mina. The user signs into the Ethereum application its Ethereum public key, which is checked against the ID that they put in the Mina ZK app. And they've now registered with the DAO, using the ZK proof as evidence. So, like, as a DAO developer, then on Ethereum, I've just acquired proof of one of my members that they were definitely at the conference, but I don't know anything about their identity. But I'm fully sure that they were at the conference and they proved it, which is really cool. Like the alternative to doing that straight in the EVM is that like everything's on chain basically. So like DAOs are a really good use case for this, like DAO membership in general. Okay, we're at the end. If there are any developers here or entrepreneurs or whatever it is, this is the Mina Discord. This is like a really appropriate time because we've just launched this ZK Ignite program. So there's 500k USDC and 500k Mina available for grants. There's Discords, there's calls every week, and there's a lot of help and support available as well from both the Mina Foundation and O1 Labs team and like the other builders themselves. So yeah, feel free to connect there. And yeah, we can start doing some questions if people have any. Anybody? Oh, could you speak up? Sorry, man, I can't. Yeah, it's yeah, the mic's coming. Cool.
Sweet. So one of the cool things about open source development, right, is we're building a lot of Legos, a lot of sort of interoperable components. What do you feel like are the key components to building a strong developer community? And what examples do you point to, and what are you looking to implement in Mina?
Good question. I can really only speak to the strategy that we're taking, which is like very developer first, right? It's that old Microsoft thing: developers, developers, developers. So it's bringing strong developers into the community and having an ecosystem where they get welcomed. There's a good culture. Everybody helps each other, and there's enough there to keep them excited, right? And like, there's excitement, and then there's like good things to use. So like really good documentation, really good tooling, a path to getting better tooling that's missing, and yeah, just like core beliefs in the community itself, like actually like writing down what the culture of the community is, what the values of the community are, and things like this. I think that's really important. And yeah, just like basically helping each other out and having a path to like be successful with your business or your project or whatever it is that you want to do. And then also like, I'm not really on the ecosystem side, on the product side, but like sometimes I think that like when developers are like looking out there for a project to build on, like they want to know that the project is going to be around in 10 years, right? Like if they want to launch a project, they're not going to launch it on. They don't want to launch it on some chain that they think like the developers might step away from, or they might stop building on the chain, or there's no like real like really long time horizon where they can run a successful business. As well as that, as a developer, I want to build on a chain where I can actually like innovate and where like I can do really, really cool things. And yeah, there's some of the reasons I would choose a particular chain. And yeah, like to develop the community, yeah, I think culture is one of the main things.
So for this DAO application specifically, does it count as a prevention for multiple account creation also to a certain degree? If you want to like, because it's directly related to the users UCP, and it's just, does it provide any prevention for multiple account creation? What's the civil resistance in that terms, basically?
That would be up to the competency of the smart contract developer, and it's definitely something they should do.
Nowadays, we see lots of ZK technology that are built as a layer 2 to Ethereum, or even they think about Bitcoin sometimes. And why Mina build their own layer 1? Is there some capabilities that you are able to do that is a bit different than other competitors?
Yeah, good question, thank you. I mean, why build that L1? So the first thing is the succinct blockchain, right? Like by having the ZK natively in consensus, we can do that like, full node security from browser and mobile phone thing, which is like if a project really values decentralization, like I think that's a good approach to take. And so you're not relying then on settling back to a layer one, which I'm not saying they don't have value decentralization, but you have more control over it, right? Then with ZK apps, yeah, again, like when the ZK apps are natively, built into the layer one is like pre-built to be able to settle these ZK transactions, right? So it's like it's like a custom-built L1 for settling ZK stuff. I would say that's probably the main reason.
Yeah, but what about your block time? Like, because usually when you look at network that try to make DeFi application, they want fast finality, they want a faster response. And about Mina, I don't remember exactly, but it's quite a slow. Yeah. It's just a question. I don't know.
Yeah, don't worry. I mean, yeah, block time is slow right now. Latency is too slow. We're going to release a really cool roadmap in March, which addresses a lot of these issues. Like speaking specifically to latency, there's a bunch of things that are being worked on right now. One is modifying consensus. So, like, I don't know if you're familiar with how Ouroboros works, but this like slot leader election basically happens around like every block producer. We're researching what it would look like to have like a BFT committee where that'll improve block time drastically, right? And like that's like a big piece. Then there's the proving time. So like the succinctness benefits that we get have a cost. So there's a few aspects to this. There's like looking for optimizations in the ZK-SNARK itself. There's like hardware acceleration that's happening at a great pace. So like that's another big bottleneck that we're working to improve. Then there's like low-hanging fruit around latency too, right? There's like we've been doing this like huge upgrade for the last like year and a half, and we haven't had an upgrade where we could get in the performance optimizations that we want. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that we're trying to do to address this, and also the roll-up ecosystem. So like roll-ups want fast finality, right? Like it's really important, and they want good latency. So like we're tackling this on the L1, like ultimately to serve as like a really like fast settlement layer for L2s. But thanks for the question. It's
about circuit, I know that Mina has a ZK circuit that enable like to program the prover, the verifier, sorry. And I saw other project that trying to do circuit also that maybe leads to hardware circuit at some point. What's the improvement of Mina about this stage? Like, do you have a partnership that want to make this kind of circuits?
So evolving the ZK circuits that we have right now. Yeah, like so, I mean, Mina team were the first to like launch into production a zero knowledge circuit that like was recursive and had no trusted setup. So like yeah, we were like I think we were way ahead at that time. Now there's a lot of stuff been happening since, so like yeah, improving the performance of the circuit is definitely on our agenda. Like as I said, we're trying to get this ZK apps out, and some things have to fall. But it's good that like this innovation is happening elsewhere, right? Like all of these proving systems are going to like, so they're going to compete and they're going to merge, and that like you can probably use any proving system anywhere, right? That they'll all compile down to like whatever blockchain that you choose, right? So it's all like really healthy. Yeah.
Healthy competition.
Yeah, exactly. Healthy competition and then interoperability between them all in the end.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, like Risk Zero, for example, or like doing really cool work on basically allowing any developer using any surface language to compile down to like whatever prover you want and things like this. So yeah, that's actually going to be on a roadmap as well in March. Yeah. Thanks again. Yeah.
Hello. Here. Hello, bro. Yeah. Okay. My name is Don Carlito. I'm from coreasia.io. Actually, this is first time I know about Mina. So sorry. And then I tried to read everything about Mina about 15 minutes ago, and then I see Mina starting to introduce themselves 2019. Am I right? 2019 or 2020, right?
Yeah, I think
I think it-
2020.
Yeah, it's until now it's almost 3 years. But when I see the Indonesian community, you have 287 member in the community. I mean, Indonesia for 2020, 10 biggest crypto market in the world. So my question is, what is strategy for next to rebranding your project in Indonesia again? Because in this country, the 10 biggest market crypto, and you only have 280% as a community, I think you need to do more rebranding. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, that's quite a small number. It's a fair observation. Yeah, happy to connect after and put you in touch with somebody on the community team to see if we can help out there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think it's it's important to highlight a few things, maybe to help everyone to, and maybe you can explain it a little bit further. The scalability side. So I remember we were trying to get the ICO of Mina like 2 years ago or something. 3 years ago, it was like a hype thing in S21 because it's like a heavy developers group, and at that time it was even more like that. So those were the days. And the most important thing we were excited about basically was the, maybe you can explain the scalability problem before everything. So the the difference between the ZK-SNARKs and like why not Starks basically like that, because privacy, the size, and also the privacy size, and also obviously alongside all the settlements, fast settlements, and block verification. These are important factors if you just have a little bit better product, like you have a product there, right? So that has been always like that. But because of the privacy, there's also a good opportunity for the different industry penetration where it needs higher privacies because it's not designed like that, right? And because of the size, there's also that thing. So the innovative power was there for the Mina to actually build their layer one. And the rest of it is a little bit like, obviously it takes time to like fully function and like fully promise all the things. But maybe you can explain us like why why is it innovative at first? Why it matters for the mass adoption, like privacy and the having the small size blockchain and the fixed size blockchain.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I'll tackle the privacy thing first, and like, I don't know, like maybe we could use FT, huh? Oh, industry use case. I'll try and do them both at the same time, right? So, like, if we think back to FTX, what was FTX? Well, it was like a centralized exchange that made it easier for people to like, you know, like match orders and like custody their assets, right? Like, and then so why does FTX need to exist? Well, you can't like manage assets. You can't like self-custody across chains. It has to be like, you know, in under the vertical chain that you're in, and there's no interoperability between these chains either. So, like right now, like these centralized exchanges need to exist. So, what I'm getting at here is that, like, ZK using interoperability, so like this ZK bridging and like proof markets and state proofs of chains like flying around everywhere that are incentivized to exist and like be orchestrated, is really going to help like the cross-chain like settlement of like transactions between chains. And then like self-custody, right? All of the chains like have their own like crypto schemes and things like this. And it's really hard, like in your MetaMask wallet, right? You can't store Bitcoin. You can't sign a Bitcoin transaction on Ethereum. So there's like a bunch of things which, like cryptography in general, is going to make much easier, like for everyone, right? So like, mentioned the bridging thing. Cross-chain custody is a thing. So couple that with ZK bridging. couple that with like being able to implement crypto on a crypto specific chain of other blockchains. Now you can have wallets that you can self-custody like multiple blockchain accounts on and broadcast those, sign those transactions and broadcast them like across multiple chains. And like this isn't a problem that's like going to be solved like today or tomorrow, but like interoperable self-custody, like multi-chain, like DEXs and things like this are coming, and it's the crypto and it's the ZK stuff I think that's going to get us there. Then to privacy, like we need privacy to bring in like this, like when everybody talks about like RealFi and like the like treasuries and like the big players with all of this liquidity, they're going to need to know who they're transacting with. They're going to need to know that like entity is regulated or is KYC'd or they're like known. They're not going to want a tornado cash situation where they don't know who they're trading with, and they're going to want privacy over their transactions, right? They're not going to have all their order books out in the open all the time and things like this. So yeah, like definitely on the privacy front, I think to bring in, you know, the type of liquidity that's like missing in DEXs now, then I think that's really important as well.
I have a question about the community of developers. You say you want to be developer first and build things. When is the next hackathon or over Mina? Oh, it's online. Okay.
Yeah, this ZK Ignite thing. Yeah, it's really worth getting involved in it. So this is cohort 1. There's been a cohort 0 already, and there's going to be like multiple cohorts throughout the year. This is the current prize money. I don't know if it's going to like remain like that, but yeah. So the goal is there to choose winners out of those projects. The community chooses the winner and allocates the prizes out to which project is there.
It's fully online. It's not like a conference or.
It's fully online.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I think Mina Foundation would help those winners like talk to VCs and try and like shepherd their project forward then as well with their grant money, trying to get funding as well after.
Just a little question about the. So, what, do we have this? Do we still have the normal validators, number of validators, kind of concepts here, or like? So, what is it exactly? The active numbers of validators, and also the what's the Nakamoto coefficient? Maybe just to understand, like, what would it take to halt the whole thing?
There's around 200 full-time validators, I think, like producing like recent blocks. These validators also run SNARK workers. So like the snarking for the system gets done by a decentralized network of SNARK provers. Some of those people are like naturally block producers as well at the same time. So like they basically maintain like the network. The coefficient I'll have to come back to you on. Yeah.
Really cool to learn about Mina and the different use cases. What's the revenue model for Mina? Like, how do you generate revenue in the different use cases?
Well, I mean, like Mina Foundation is like not for profit, and the developer and like the core teams are funded by like the token sale. So like that's basically the revenue model as far as I can say. Yeah. I mean, there's the transaction fee model on the network as well, which is like economic models for people to, I mean, launch their own tokens, generate like transaction fees from those tokens once they get users and things like this. So like, there's like the on-chain component as well.
Okay, I'm going to jump on your previous experiences in other layer ones, and like. How do you see it, the whole ecosystem growth, like the last couple of years compared to maybe like 5 years ago? What's the general trends that is not reflected to the market and price and everything, like on the basis on the back end? what are the layer one's contributors are worried about, and like what do they want to contribute to the growth of the ecosystem generally, and how can you compare it to the trends that's 5 years ago basically?
Yeah, really good question. Thanks. Yeah, so when I joined crypto, people were thinking about like consensus, and they were thinking about like decentralization, and everybody was like forking Bitcoin like to change Bitcoin, and like all of the Bitcoin competitors were also proof of work, and like in parallel people were trying to figure out if proof of stake was a thing, right? Like, you know, is it secure? Is it going to work? There was a lot of doubters around that, and then people figured out that like proof of stake can be as secure as proof of work, and now, I mean, if you look at the top like layer ones, like they're almost all proof of stake, right? I'm not saying like the one is better than the other. I think that there's definitely like proof of work should be a thing, but it's definitely becoming almost a Bitcoin only thing now. Yeah, so like when I joined crypto, that's what people were trying to solve, I think, was the main thing.
And also it's interesting, right? The block size was a huge thing that led to a fork, and it was basically like a very important discussion in the Bitcoin history.
Yeah, exactly.
So Mina stands there like with related to the Bitcoin related historical advancement basically.
Yeah, and like the block size, like at its core, was a decentralization issue, right? That was like I think that's what it, like for these protocols to exist over 10 or 20 years, like I think it really boils down to like you know, functionality, decentralization, and community including governance. Right. So then what happened? Scalability, I think, was the next thing, right? Like CryptoKitties happened, like ICOs happened, proof of stake was kind of coming along, and people were trying to figure out how to scale these things. You know, and like, I don't know when Vitalik first started talking about roll-ups, but like that was identified as a potential solution probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And like we're only getting to like production versions of these things now. We have optimistic roll-ups, which are in production. ZK roll-ups are coming, which are better. And what problems are we trying to solve now? Like, I think it's a lot around interoperability, right? Like, what lessons did we learn from the last cycle? Well, the bridges suck, and like centralized like custody is like terrible. So like for me, I think that's where the innovation needs to come from now. And I do think like as ZK scales Ethereum, like scales Mina, benefits privacy, it's also going to be really useful for interoperability and for like for better crypto for solving custody issues, right? Like I think better crypto is the answer to a lot of like the problems generally, and innovation on that front is like is what we need to do. Yeah.
So better encryption with like maybe size and speed issues and scalable interoperability to like basically make it, it's a huge issue for everyone who's issuing any product basically, because eventually it's related to your fundraising, how easy it's going to happen. Like sometimes you just like, I mean, I like really like Mina, but like then you're thinking about like how it's going to actually unfold when you want to like launch your product and everything. So like this is I think really important. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, like I think ultimately like Mina applications will run on layer 2s. That's where people will get the high TPS and the lower latency. And like Mina, like ZK apps themselves, again, because of the crypto, they're like easily composable with each other. So like those L2 systems can talk to each other. And like, again, with the state-proof bridging, the state-proof bridging can talk to like Ethereum layer 2s, and like, yeah, all sorts of stuff. And like people are talking about 100,000 TPS, I think, for some of the Ethereum ZK rollup projects. So like, I really think like the TPS numbers are going to get really big over the next few years as well.
Okay, I'm almost having a quick session of just one question. I just pop up. What's the biggest competitive advantage in against Polygon EVM compatible ZKs at this point? And second question is, so like all this new topics like Web3, data sovereignty. I mean, not the data sovereignty, but identity sovereignty, IPFS related or an IP related NFTs, and like securing the like all this new language is going to be like more or less popular with Web3, Web5 kind of language. What's the roadmap for Mina to integrate more innovation on that in terms of like specifically data identity sovereignty, basically?
Okay, I'll start with the last one first. And like, there's a new roadmap coming in March, which is like super detailed. And I actually, the reason why we created this roadmap, because we felt that people didn't really get what Mina is now, and they don't really get to where we're going relative to like other people in the space, right? So that's what we're trying to solve with this thing. I think you were talking about maybe like ZK identity and like proof of personhood and things like this. Like there's one application of Mina where, you know, like you can take a centralized database, create a zero knowledge proof, and prove that like a person exists in that database. So like, you know, person A is a member of like whatever this database says. So that could be like a KYC database or whatever it is. But again, like nothing goes on chain, just proof that you're in the database. And like that's a really primitive like use case for like for identity. But yeah, there's a lot of good work happening in identity, like generally. Polygon, I can't speak really to Polygon. Polygon have a lot going on. They're doing a lot of work in ZK. And I believe they're close to launching a ZK EVM. And they're less focused on the like ZK programmability side, as far as I understand. But yeah, I think we're like competitively like advantaged okay against Polygon.
So can we say Mina has the biggest potential if we want to if we want to build the next generation Web3 app that operates on mobile phones and like any integration with like specific, obviously, ideology that includes privacy and everything. But as an infrastructure, the biggest potential of Mina is a little bit hidden on how we are going to build apps to use every day on mobile phones. So can we say that Mina has the biggest potential to be that infrastructure?
I'd say we're on the right path. Like with the full node, like being available on browsers and in cell phones, and like Snarky.js being like an easy way to program in zero knowledge, I'd say like those two things combined like give us a good chance to getting there.
Okay. Then one more question about the marketing and the community side, because you also have a lot of experience in marketing, community building in layer ones. Like, how do you see it? Like, how do you compare different products? Like maybe. Because sometimes when we have different speakers here, there's always like, what comes first, product or the community? Or and so you have a good understanding and experience in like one or the other, both basically. What can you say like to build like any product or any layer one, the community strategies? Like what keeps the community together? Like what makes it a little bit more tolerant if you have a delayed roadmap or anything? Like, can you share some insights on the community and marketing side, please?
Yeah, like it's a hot topic between like me being a product guy and marketers who want to market stuff, especially when there's like really heavy crypto involved that's like getting invented and slow to implement. Yeah, like I mean, like incentivizing participation, I think, is a good idea. Like we've always had like incentivized testnets where, you know, people get rewarded like to like, you know, for bug bounties and to like run validators and things like this. And I think that's a good idea for people because it, you know, it builds up their skill set using the protocol, and B, it like, you know, it kind of pays them for their time, right? Like in the community. Like as far as marketing things which aren't finished yet, like, yeah, I don't know, it's like a tricky one. It's like you can claim that you like have all this like, you know, coming tomorrow and things like that, and you can create a vision for the future. Like I think there's like a balance between, you know, like creating a vision for the future and like being kind of like honest about like how hard it is to get there, where you are, and like what the next steps are to get there. So like just creating that like path forward, I think is a good idea, and like some projects do that quite well, I think, especially with people sharing ideas on blog posts and things like this that are like educational and not really claimy, but like are at a good kind of like technical level that everybody can understand at the same time. Does that answer your question, or was it more marketing focused? Yeah.
Just to understand what, like maybe just to push you to share more about it, what works? What do different audience work actually when they have, I don't know, $5 to $5 million investment at any product? Like, I mean, it's a very vague question, obviously, but because we are talking a lot about like what's different between Web2 communities and Web3 communities in like most of the S21 and like Bali related events. Be it like a simple NFT collection community, or like general founders community, or a layer one. Like there's something that's like maybe with an insight you understand that's like this is definitely they would expect this from you as a founder or like the project contributors, basically kind of insights if you can share.
Yeah, like I mean, I always think back to like kind of like people's lives incentives, like as well as financial incentives. Like as a layer one, you kind of like you want people to like bet the farm on your project because they believe in it, because they think that they can build a successful business on it, and they can like innovate technically on it because that's what everybody wants to do, right, as a developer. So yeah, I think it's just about, again, just speaking as an L1, because that's where all my experience is like it's creating that vision for the future and like establishing trust with the community that like you're going to deliver like on the vision that you're creating, and like the tech just kind of like stands for itself in the end, and then people will come in and they will build and like they will use the things that are there. Betting the farm, I think that like somehow I think that's the key.
Thank you, and we can have like more questions on after the session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.